Welcome, everyone. Nice to see everyone on the participant list. Got a nice crew tonight. I think we should start going, David, because we got a lot to cover here with Captain Joe Blados.
Wait, are we on time? I feel like we're a few minutes early, but okay, we can go. I'm happy to, move along. So, what's up, Lou? How's it going there?
It's going well. It's going well. It's great to see you. It looks like last time I saw you in person was just the other week in New Jersey for the Edison Fly Show. That was awesome.
That was a lot of fun. We posted some content from that show too that I hope everyone's looking at.
And where are you now? You look like you're on the set of Yellowstone, David.
Well, I'm out in Idaho where my dad lives, visiting him for a few days, and I'll be winging my way back home tomorrow.
Awesome. Well, great to see you and great to have the legendary Captain Joe Blados with us. And Joe, just to make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, because I'm always sensitive to this of this with my last name. Is it Blados or Blados?
No, well, it depends on what side of the tracks you're on. You know, out here, everybody says Blados. All right.
Blados.
But if it's fishing, it's Blados. Okay. So wait, it was funny when I was in basic training, and one of my drill sergeants started speaking Spanish to me because it sounds, Hispanic, Blados, or Blados. And I kind of looked at him and scratched my head, I don't know what you're saying, but then it's actually Polish, believe it or not. But my grandpa.
Well, we're going to get more into that. We're going to get more into that in a few minutes. But before that, I just want to, thank our crew, Tom Kaczynski and Clay Andrews for helping us out tonight. And also we have a few sponsors that I always want to acknowledge: the American Saltwater Guides Association, Norovice, the Articulate Fly, the Saltwater Edge. You guys are wonderful. And of course, what's very near and dear to my heart, the Got One app. And if you guys haven't downloaded the Got One app yet, you really gotta do it. And there's some incredible changes coming down the road. I'm not allowed to talk about it because it's super top secret, but it is just going to change the way we log fish, and it's going to change the way the whole world views fisheries. It's going to be incredible. So, and Lou, I probably said too much already, but anyway, so I'd like to introduce you, Joe, and for those of you who know Joe, this is going to be a wonderful evening. Joe has made an incredible mark on the fly fishing world with the Crease Fly, and his name is really synonymous with that. There's not a box in the northeastern United States that does not contain a Crease Fly, and I might venture to say there's not a box of flies up and down the entire eastern seaboard that probably does not contain a Crease Fly. And additionally, besides Joe's incredible contribution to fishing, little known fact, Joe is a phenomenal artist. He does incredible work, and we're going to show examples of it tonight. And we're very proud to be able to show this stuff. And Joe's done a couple of book covers too, and we'll show that. But let's move on and talk to Joe. He's going to tie a fly for us, and we're going to learn all about his life and times. So Joe, welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome, Joe. Welcome, Joe. And just very quickly before anything, I think most of you are, folks who have been here before. As you know, ask questions in the Q&A box. So if you scroll down to the bottom of your Zoom screen, click on that Q&A icon if you have any questions. And we'll make sure that we Joe, we'll let you know what questions come in from the audience as we go. But maybe, Joe, tell us, where are you right now? What an incredible background there. What are we looking at behind you?
A trailer that I keep my motorcycle in, but it's nice and peaceful and quiet. So I brought all my computers in here to do my artwork, and I do some metal sculptures in here. Not so much welding. I have another shop that I do the welding in, because although this is a lot of wood and it burns pretty fast. But yeah, I got this thing. It was either build a garage or or get a shed. But this is nice because it has wheels and I can move it if I had to. Um, but anyway, it's a great man cave, and it's like I say, it's a good workshop. You know, has an ice box and a heater. So that's what else do
Ah,
you, you
perfect.
know? But
Well, that
anyway,
that dates you calling it an ice box. I still call my refrigerator an ice box.
I
My
know,
kids look at me and they're like, "What are you
I know.
talking about?"
We're old. Yeah, you're not old.
Exactly.
I am. I mean, I'm in
Nah, I'm
my 50s,
pretty
so
old too.
you
But
know.
if folks stick around, I'm hoping we can impose on you to give us a little quick camera tour back there at the end of this
Certainly.
this
Yeah.
show. But so Joe, tell us a little before we start tying, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into fly fishing and sort of the story behind your fly tying. And then, you have a really interesting background. I know you're a welder and an artist. Would love to hear about how you got into this whole art.
Well, the art came later on. The fish. My grandfather was a commercial fisherman. He had a 40-foot haul seine boat. Now everybody hears haul seine and thinks a bad word, but it was actually a power seine boat where we would anchor, put 3 anchors on a beach, run a shoreline out, and then have a pocket. Uh, and we were targeting porgies over by Cartwright's and Tobacco Lot and Gardeners Island. Um, and what you would do is you'd make a big sweep with about a mile in it, and you had to pull it in by hand. The great thing about the boat, it was a George A. Kirby, was 1930 vintage, round bottom wooden boat, and it was like a flat skiff because you could run it right up onto the beach, to tighten up the net. Um, and back in the day, we targeted porgies, and there was abundance of porgies, and they're coming back too. But it's was a lot of work, and it wasn't a bad way to fish because you would take the pocket, tie it off, drag it offshore, and bail the fish onto the deck with a rowboat and stanchions that held it off. But anyway, so that was in 1968, and that's just when I was supposed to be graduating high school, and I never did go back to high school to get my diploma. So to this day, I don't know if I ever even got one because I wasn't the bright. I was always looking out the window when I was in school. I didn't want to be there, and they kept kicking me out because I never got a haircut. Um, you know, that's when the
Hey,
Beatles were coming in and stuff. But
hey,
anyway,
Joe, can you tell us a story about how you would throw all the stripers back?
yeah, my grandfather used to get PO'd because I was always a striper freak. Even when we went out, there was a couple other boats from the south side, Lester's and another Mitch Miller, I think his name was. So we would have to go out the night before to anchor up and hold our area so nobody else could come in. And I'd always bring a spin rod out and run around with a little Sharpie and fish the back a lot, and which is a great spot. I mean that side over there, I love that
Yeah,
side.
still is.
But anyway, so and then 69, I got drafted. Um, Surprisingly, uh, the week of Woodstock, and I'm in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, doing basic training. And then after basic training, a lot of people still going to Vietnam, and they sent me to Fort Eustis, Virginia, as a seaman. Now I didn't know what a seaman was. I mean, I didn't know the Army had a Navy.
Mm.
So we went to seaman school, and you had a choice of advanced seaman school or engineering school. I took engineering school after that, and then leadership school. And then at that time, Nixon was in, so they were trying to back out a little bit. We had a lot of Vietnamese ARVN soldiers, I guess it was ARVN, and we were training them to take over our spots. And
Mm.
the boats that they had were landing craft, LCMs, LCUs, small tugs. And they had a couple small freighters. So it was mainly to run supplies up and down the rivers in Vietnam. Anyway, so one night they come in and they said, we may go to Nam, but you're going to have to re-up if you want to stay in boats. And I really didn't want to re-up, because I was drafted. So there's about 6 of us. They shipped us out to Kansas. Now there's no bloody water in Kansas, so scratch your head again. I ended up as a loader in a tank and at Fort Riley, and we went. They were backing out of Vietnam at that point. That was in 70 and 71. And we just went to Germany. I did some maneuvers with NATO forces. And that was in November when we had a fuel shortage and it was bloody cold. But we went from one end of the country to the other with tanks, and that was actually pretty cool, in more ways than one. And but so after that, I got out after my 2 years and went back on the boat. I met a guy, Curly Jack Phillips. He's like my father. He reminds me of Lefty a lot. He had a Maverick up here at the same time Paul Dixon and David, and actually he might have had it here before you guys. I don't know, but anyway, he resided in Florida in the winter and brought the boat up every spring. So we hooked up, and one heck of a relationship, because he's the smartest guy I've ever met in my life. Built a steel dragger, blanks. He was taking Tompkins cane and planing them down, making his own planing blocks. And
Wow.
I have decoys that he made. I mean, cedar strip canoes, cedar strip kayaks. Unfortunately, now he's in his high 90s, almost totally blind, and but he's one of the greatest guys that ever helped me out. Besides, and I got to give credit to Glenn Mickelson. He's my without him, I wouldn't even be here. And he's one of the better fly tires that I think he's the best fly tire I've ever met. And we used to do all the shows together. Every Fermensky show from north all the way out to Charlotte. But yeah, and then we had kind of fallen out, probably due to politics, but hopefully before the end of either one of us kicking a bucket, we'll bury the hatchet, And then I got Bob Popovics. He got me into Umpqua. I got to thank him. But probably one of the craziest guys I've ever met in my life, Nick Curcion. He's like, he's the funniest guy you ever want to fish with. I mean, he'll make you laugh. He's just a good all around friend. And he's out in California now, but and having issues with his hip. But hopefully I can get him back out here, because he's like the Rodney Dangerfield. I mean, if you got to go take a leak before you go on the boat, because you'll be laughing so hard you'll wet yourself. Anyway, but those guys, anyway, they all helped me out. But so when I picked up the fly rod because spin rod was like no challenge, especially after commercial fishing, and it's not like it was that easy, but I wanted something a little bit more difficult, and there wasn't that many people really doing it. So I went and I didn't know what I was doing either. I got a Fenwick rod with a Fenwick reel, bought a bunch of tying materials, urine stained foxtail. Didn't know what that was. I said, oh, that sounds good. Plus it's for fresh water. It's not for salt water. But anyway, hooked up with some salty fly rodders, and there was some great people back in the day that would help you out. And one of them, Bob Woolley, was an illustrator for medical books, and he's the one that taught me how to use a Wacom slate with a digital airbrush and pen and Photoshop. Now, most of the time when you're doing pictures, you get a lot of people scan them in and stuff. This is starting out from blanks and working in layers. which is kind of neat because you can take a fish in one layer and turn it around and distort it. But you would set the brushes for a skip pattern to make the scales, and it's quite the thing. But anyway, pretty much self-taught myself that stuff, and then in between, I was always watching Peanut Bunker and their profile. Bob Popovic said, "You ran over one of my Bob's bangers, and that's how you came up with it," you know. Anyway, but no, I didn't run over a Bob's banger. I was getting sheet foam from Dale Clemens in Pennsylvania because I used to hollow out the live body cylinders with a Dremel tool, and the whole house would be full of foam dust, you know. But then after that, I would squeeze it to get a wider profile. So my wife would say, "You have to do something because you're making a mess." And then Clemens had a sheet of 2mm live body foam, and that's, you know, I got the idea of, you know, that ought to work out pretty well, and it did. But that was the beginning of it.
And Joe, what was the problem so this is something that I think we first heard from probably like Johnny, I think, was like, you know, and Bob talks about this too, is like every innovative fly is trying to solve a problem. So what was it that you were trying to do that made you think, oh, I can use foam?
It was a lot easier to cast with that profile, and it acts like a dart. In other words, a little more streamlined. But the thing that I liked is that a lot of times if you throw something heavy on a flat, it freaks the fish out, you know, or a big popper or something that you know. But this seemed to be a little bit, you know, less intimidating. It also it makes a little slurp, you know. I like fishing at night, and if you're fishing in estuaries, a lot of times from the beach, or you know, I used to do it from the boat too, but you'll hear fish coming up and slurping either on worms or shrimp on the surface. And so I would take this thing. Matter of fact, it's funny because Nick was fishing with me one night, and I would take it and water haul it a couple times. There was a lot of fire in the water, and just let it sit, and the bass would just come up and gobble it up. You know, Nick didn't have anything, and I had a lot. But other times, I was out at Mulford's fishing one of these and smoking it. That's when I was smoking cigarettes. Bass busting all around me. Wouldn't touch it. Had a cigarette butt, threw it in the water. Bass come up right next to me, ate the cigarette butt. Time to go home, you know? So, you know, nothing works all the time. You know, well, you know, you can go out there and have the best caster and the best guy in the world, and sometimes the fish just don't cooperate. But at other times you got kids or rookies or somebody, and they set the world on fire. They'll drop the back cast and they hook up a fish, you know? I mean, it happens.
So Joe, what do you have planned for tonight to show us? Because I think the folks at home would love to see you tie a fly.
Well, I can do a couple, but no, the newer ones with the wadding. Boyd Pfeiffer, back in the day, this is back in 92 or 93, did an article either in a Fly Time magazine or Fly Fishing magazine, and he set me up a bunch of Waddington shanks. Now I see you guys are doing a lot of articulating flies and stuff, and I played around with it for a while, and you know, does it work? Does it work? The idea is, if you got a toothy critter, like the bluefish come in May in the bay, and it does act as an added leader, especially on now this one, this thing right here looks like a antenna for the mothership, but that's what I have inside of this, and this will actually flex. And it acts as a leader, like say we've got a tarpon or something, and I did go down to Flamingo with Curly Jack Phillips, the guy that I bought my Maverick from, the first Maverick, and which was a Berg boat, 18-footer, and it was quite the boat, and it had a 200 on it, and it was scattered out pretty good. I used to race boats when I was a kid, so I had a assortment of boats throughout my life. But anyway, we were down in a little mud bay and topping busting all over the place, not connecting. So I'm talking to him. He's on the platform, and he had a Cudicraft at that point, boat, because he sold me the Maverick. I had the fly just sitting in the water right next to the boat, and a big tarpon come up and grab it. And of course, I got all this slack in, so you can't set the hook. But anyway, it's not a bad fly if you're going to have a toothy critter, because even if it rips the body, it's very easy to put another body on. You know, bodies are a dime a dozen. I mean, and especially with these new foils and stuff that they came out with, you know, almost every fish, bait fish, has some kind of silver or chrome look to it, and you know, you can, I don't know, let's see, you know, like bunker. I see, I
Yeah.
keep looking at the screen instead of, I'm supposed to look at the camera here, and it's just not easy. I'm going to tell you, this is like
You're doing great, Joe.
doing the
Okay,
shows.
I'm just excited to watch you tie a fly. I mean, I love what you're showing us.
I don't know. Yeah, well, yeah, all right. Well, we'll get to that.
So, so Joe, where do you, so maybe let's, and we can actually transition to the fly time, but like, so folks can order the foam now, right? From any fly shop. It's just fly foam. Is there a particular type that?
This is, I use the sticky back. Now, I just want to, this is what we were putting into kits. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah,
Anyway,
we can
hold
see
that
it.
up a little closer there.
Yeah, the only thing is
There
a
you go.
focus point
Okay.
on a right
Okay.
now.
good.
And what it is, I mean, when I was selling kits, you know, we buy probably about 1,000 sheets of this stuff.
Mhm.
One of the reasons I got away from it was because the Chinese make this stuff, okay?
Mm.
And when they make it, they keep changing the bloody adhesives on the back. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Now, I'll give you a quick, what you do is just peel this stuff off, and it's so easy to make a body and fast. I mean, normally, if I wasn't on camera, I could do a fly in like 5 minutes, just a regular Crease Fly. But being on camera, I know I'm gonna goof. So anyway, all right, the foils. Now, what I do is I use a paper cutter, okay, to cut foils in different sizes and stuff. And let me get a white
Hey,
one.
Joe, we're going to go off camera, but keep talking. We'll talk to you, but we want your screen to be larger. So we're going to shut off our camera. So don't be
Okay.
put off if we're not on the screen.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, again, transfer foils. Used to be Jones Tones, I was getting them from. Now there's a place called Royal Foil in New Jersey, and it's a simple matter of, let me make sure you can see this. Just laying this stuff on and running your finger over it. Nothing like being inept here. Yeah.
So folks who've never tied these before, so you're buying it's a foam sheets, which you can get from a fly shop. And then it's the transfer foil that sticks onto it like that.
Right. Again, you know, even the craft stores have this stuff.
Okay.
Probably,
Can you get it at like a Michael's or something like
yeah,
that? Like
yeah, Hobby Lobby, maybe. I don't know. I used to do wholesale at almost every Northeast shop back in the day, and one of the keys is curved scissors.
Oh,
and
that's smart.
it makes life so much easier now. Let me see if we, you know, probably make it for this one here.
Yeah, because
And
my
all I
bellies
do
were always
is
like
follow
jagged.
Yeah.
the curve up, and then I'm going to cut a little bit of a recess in the back. Now this is a big fly. Big flies, I love throwing them with sinking lines. Everybody says, well, it's not going to pop. It'll pop a little bit if you use a longer leader. Portland has a good line that's a real long, I think it's 350 grains. what happens is the line will go down and droop, and you two pops, and then all of a sudden the fly starts to wobble down towards the bottom. Then you stop it, and it'll flutter up. It's kind of a it's real productive in like on the edges of channels, and where any edge estuary that was dug out a little bit.
So that's fascinating, Joe, because I think a lot of people probably, I mean, I'm guilty of this myself, think of the crease fly as sort of almost like a popper, like a surface fly. But I've heard you say this before, you actually prefer to fish it subsurface.
Right, right. Well, not all the time. I mean, if I'm in shallow water, if you see fish busting on the surface, you want to be on the surface. If you're doing a searching thing in like a rock piles where there's some current and stuff, then I use the sinking line. I mean, it's versatile, and it works good both ways. But the bigger ones, I mean, like these are a little harder to throw, unless you use overline a rod and stuff. And but if you use the sinking line, I mean, you got a good distance on this because there's no weight. It's feather light. That's what I like about the foils, because they don't add no weight. And what else? All right. Let me see. I already had a body cut out for this because this one's too short. Okay, this is now, first of all, I got an imitation reel, which is kind of rusty. So bear with me here if I can get this bloody hook in there. Again, I always on these extended flies and stuff, I always go with a bigger hook. The hook acts as a keel on a sailboat, and it holds the fly more upright. In other words, you always want to keep the center of gravity down to the bottom. A lot of guys will cut this front face with a lot of slope. Too much slope will make the fly spin, especially when you're casting it. That's the worst thing. And the other thing is, most of the time, if you're beach fishing, I put a little plug in the front, because if you drop your back cast and you rip one of the cheeks, the bloody thing is going to spin. And there's nothing worse than having a spinning fly. Give it to somebody you don't like. But no. Anyway, but all right, let me see.
So what hook is that you have there? What size hook is
It's
that?
an owner, but it's this one, that's a 6.0.
6/0.
6.0.
And then what is the wire that you're using there? Is that just piano
I got,
wire?
all right, you'll see the instructions on the thing, but it's
Okay.
4 strands, all right, of this is, I think, 30. And I ordered some. It was way too thick. They came this. But what you do is you twist it together. Okay, I have it again. I should have done this in front of you, but and then you heat it up with a lighter, and it fuses itself together. So it acts as a hook extension and a built-in leader. All right. It may, the key to any of these things is to put a lot of thread on. Now, I'm going to put more thread on this. And Lefty, Lefty used to come up to the Salties all the time. And I got to say, the Salties were a big help in a lot of stuff. We had some really good people in there, good fly tires, and fun people that, and bar guys that like to hang out at the bars and stuff. So we had a good group of guys. A lot of them are gone now because of age, but anyway, but Lefty had shown me how to. I'm looking for my bobbin here. Just bear with me. Okay. Now and CA glues. I mean, that's another. All right, now what we're gonna do, take this out and see if you can see this. But I use,
That looks good. And Joe,
usually it's not this hard, but
right. And Joe, why exactly do you like to have a lot of thread on up and down that shank that you're building?
It holds the foam. The glue will absorb more in the thread, and it keeps it from. Usually, if the body rips off, you'll still have some foam left on there. Anyway, but
I see, because the
That,
foam is
that's not-
adhering to the thread.
yeah. So that, but that's how I do it. I mean, without
Yeah.
knocking your teeth loose, um, just keep on going back and forth. The
That's
slow,
interesting. It's the same
It's
technique
just
that's used actually for beast flies for tying on the extension off a beast fly. It's interesting.
yeah, that is, and it just gives you a good anchor for the glue and the foam, so you don't have to worry so much about it
right,
spinning
right,
off while using it. Yeah,
right. And now I'm going to be out of your picture, but that's all right. I want to just get some CA on this so I can cut. Yeah, I'm cheating. I'm going to save time because normally I would go a couple more times, but not really necessary.
So
Uh,
CA, Joe, what can you tell folks what that is?
this CA, actually, some of the best glues I get. This is what I used to put in the kits. BSI. The reason being, when we did the kits one year, Orvis had ordered, I think, about 200 of them, and they left them on racks in the store, and the sun would dry the stuff out.
Hmm.
You know, you gotta be careful where you put this stuff, and also when you spray an accelerator, you have to watch out that it's not open. But
and
anyway,
just for the folks at home, I just want to say that the CA glue is basically like crazy glue. It's a cyanamide
it
based glue
is.
that you
It's
can,
crazy good.
yeah,
Yeah, and you can get. I mean, it's all different brands. Loctite has one. Um, Also Gorilla Glue.
yeah,
But try to get the thick. The only thing bad about the thick is it takes forever to dry if you don't use
right.
an accelerant. And
The Wapsi has a really good brush on one that I use.
yeah,
So
now I don't want to carry this thread over without I'm going to tie a tail on. The tail acts like a dart, kind of um I just hope I'm not used to doing this stuff, guys. I mean, yeah, but anyway, the tail acts as a dart and it'll help stabilize it in the air. But you don't want to make too much of a tail because it'll kill the action, especially on the bigger ones, bigger flies. So now we're just going to throw some bucktail on here. And again, don't expect this to be a primo fly. I can never tie flies to sell because I don't think two flies I ever made look the same. Uh,
I feel the same.
yeah, and it's a high tie on the tail. Just and you don't have to get fussy because you're going to cover it up.
Mhm.
Um, and you can throw some flash in if you want. Just, put a little flash. And normally I put a little bit in, but again, I'm not a great fly tire, but but they work, and that's all I care about. Um, 3D doesn't catch fish.
It looks
Yeah,
great.
you
You're
know.
tying for the fish, not for people, and that's the important thing.
Well, I like realistic though. I've always been into realistic looking art and stuff, but well, mostly. And then one more on the top, and
Is that a different color you put on top?
yeah, I usually go darker on the top. Most bait are lighter on the bottom and darker on the top. Most bait. Um, Depends what
By
you're
the
trying.
way, Joe, you have a love missive from your buddy Al Quadroshi, who says you are the man, and Nikki sends his best.
Okay,
Al,
yeah, I
Al's been a
haven't.
great supporter of Masters of the Fly over the years, so nice to see him here. And I know he signed up as soon as he saw your name out there.
Yeah, that's Al Q, right?
Yeah, LQ.
Yeah, yeah. No, he's got. I think he's got some of my artwork on his website. I haven't seen Al I haven't seen him in a long time. We used to do it when we were doing the shows back in the day. But
Hey,
okay,
Joe, quick question.
yeah,
How are you attaching the hook to the wire extension? Can you talk about it for a second?
yeah. I can actually show you in a minute, but let me. Why this is still sticky here.
Oh, yeah.
I have to do my thing
So
now.
you put the CA on the edge of the foam. I didn't see it. Watch. I was
Yeah, I have some on a thread, right?
on the thread. Okay.
Yeah, and what I'm gonna do is I always start in the back, um, just a little bit, because you're gonna have a mess if you don't do that. And then we have, hang on, I got a clamp here someplace. Ah, little clamps or clothespins or something just to hold it. And then you can work. Now, again, with this too, I try to keep this as low as I can and just work my way up to the front of the fly. I guess you're getting this. I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah, we can
it's
see
great.
it.
You're right in
Yep,
the middle of the camera.
we're good.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. And again, and don't worry how this front comes out, because it doesn't matter which direction it's, as long as you, and I always use a loop knot, no matter what because the fly actually has a little bit more of a wobble to it. It allows it to work a little bit better.
So you're pinching the edge of the foam on the thread wraps, basically.
Yeah, right, right. Right,
Gotcha.
and try not to glue your fingers, because it's hard to cast these things when you've got fingers glued like I just did. Um, and you have to wait a couple of seconds for this stuff to set up. But again,
It
uh,
seems to bond pretty fast. I noticed that when
well,
I was
it
doing
doesn't, it doesn't,
it
but
doesn't, it doesn't.
yeah,
By the way, we had a
yeah,
couple guys weigh in. So CA is contact adhesive, but also known as cyanoacrylate.
right. Yeah,
So
don't ask me to pronounce it either, because I can't do it either. CA,
so
yeah,
thank you, Jared and Chris.
and I'll
Thank you. Yeah.
spray a little accelerator in there in the throat. Normally I don't use accelerator, but to speed things up. All right, now, all right, so it's still a little wet. What I'll do now, we put eyes on. I always like to have eyes on a fly for some reason, but see how this thing flexes?
Wow, that's great.
Um,
Hmm.
so if you do get something that's got a lot of teeth and it gives you a little more space without, I really, a lot of guys will fish with wire with the bluefish and stuff. If you use this, usually you won't get cut off unless the fish comes up in the front. But when we got those 12-pound bluefish on the bay on the flats in May, these things, I had Michael Garrett, president of Salty Fly Rods. We murdered the fish with these things.
Hmm.
But and again, I still got some drawing to do here. But and then we just throw some eyes on. And normally, you know, like Glenn, when he ties a fly, he uses slow epoxy because it won't turn yellow as fast, like 30-minute epoxy instead of 5-minute. But I'll put a real light coat because I still want it to flex of 5-minute, and I don't care if it turns yellow. Um, you know, hopefully I'll have a couple of fish on it.
So you use epoxy to coat the foam and not the CA, because I did
No, no,
mine.
it's no CA. No, it's got
Okay.
to be epoxy. Um, no. And again, if you're really fussy, what you can do is take the foils. After you do put, I can put some epoxy on here if you want it. When epoxy starts to set up, gets a little tacky, and Popovich will tell you this too. You can put the foil down, and it'll transfer, but and it'll be really bright. It's a lot more. This is pretty subtle
Mhm.
now, but and again, there's no weight whatsoever on this. This is you know, this is pretty easy to cast. It's a little wind resistant. That's why, again, if you have a problem, you know, throw the sinking line on a sink tip, and it should get it out. But with that, again, I would use a longer leader, and you know, and then you can always resort to these baby ones too. This
I,
is a big difference in the size of these things.
Mhm.
But
Joe, I've been finding, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that very often when I have people casting crease flies, instead of a sinking line, if I want that fly on top, I have them use a shooting head, and it carries the fly beautifully.
yeah, You know, for some strange reason, albacore, when you're fishing with albacore and false albacore in the spring, you got tons of anchovies, and anchovies are tiny little, um, for some reason, when you put one of these on, the small ones, and everybody goes two-handed, try to get it in fast. Just let it sit. I've had more fish where I watched these things one time. I went down a Mulford, sat on a rock, and albacore would, and wherever the tide would be roaring, the bait would stack up behind a rock, and the fish would come in, tear them up, but then you'll see the anchovies turn white, and they're kind of like crippled and stunned, and then the albacore will come back and act just like trout, just come up and, I mean, it's not like that all the time, but the other thing that's over by Plum Island, when we get those crab hatches, those little
Oh, yeah.
ghost crabs, I don't know what the heck they are. Matter of fact, they get so thick in the eddies on the north side of Plum Island, I worry about my engine clogging up because, you're pulling them in through the water intake. And but you'll watch bass, and they're just swimming there with the mouths open, scooping the stuff up, similar to a worm hatch, which will drive you nuts. But because you're competing with so much stuff, but you throw something a little bit different in there, like a crease fly, and sometimes you'll luck out, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
you will connect. So
Joe,
And
there's a question here. There's a question here that somebody asked, which is from an anonymous, from an anonymous attendee, wants to know, do you always leave the front of the fly open and hollow?
yes, except for beach fishing. When you're beach fishing, but close it off. Actually, I didn't close any of these off. Boat fishing, I like to keep it open because it has a little bit of a slurp. And you don't have to worry about the water coming out of it when you go pick it up to cast, because it comes out. I mean, don't ask me why. It doesn't have bilge pump or anything, and doesn't have scuppers. So, but even with the front the face on it, it will there's no problem with the water coming out. The face, when you put a plug in, I would put it in a little bit deeper. I usually push it in with a toothpick, which is a pain in the butt, but and you still can get a slurp out of it. I mean, these things don't they're not a Bob's Banger. They're not going to make explosion on the water, but I don't want them to. So I just want to slurp and get their attention, and then hopefully the rest is up to the fish gods. But anyway, that's
Mhm. Very cool. And what about, do you always wrap them with the foil? I mean, I've seen them tied just with the foam and with marker on it too.
right. Right. The early one, all the early stuff I did before the foils. A friend of mine, Charlie Benjamin, turned me on to the foils. He found them in a craft store, and he says, maybe you can use these things, and it panned out. I mean, but yeah, you can actually, and I'll show you. It's one of the keys with markers. Now, again, I always use my fingers. You don't, I mean, you used to, is to smudge with your fingers, and it acts, it feathers it out. Let's see. Hang on, just bear with me. And yet multicolor. Usually I use Sharpies, but I just happen to have these handy. And this won't look really good until you put epoxy. When you put epoxy on, and some color yellow. Yellow. The more you shake, the better it looks. You know, but again, don't, and you can take some sprinkles, and put sprinkled, put a coat of epoxy on and sprinkle like in a sort of, well, actually I used to sell a shaker. There's a little bottle, and it put a hole in it, and you just tap it, and it would be pearlescent dust basically. But I still, like I say, I still like silver. To me, is, and it's not that difficult to do. or find. You should be able to find it.
Hey,
And
Joe.
you prefer the epoxy, like 5-minute epoxy over anything else over like what about like a UV resin? Some people I've
I've
heard
never used it, you know. I was
Okay.
always mad at Bobby Popovich because he was supposed to send me some. No, anyway, no, you know, my dentist uses it too. It freaks me out. But yeah, no, I keep it
Just
simple, you
keep it
know.
simple. Yeah, use the epoxy. And then there was a question also about what you use for a plug. You were talked about filling in the hole for, certain applications. What do you use for
Right.
the plug?
All I'm doing is, I'll give you a quick demo. Just going to cut a little plug out of some scrap. Watch, I'm going to have a hard time putting this in there too, probably. All right. And I'm just going to open that up and stick. All right, let me get a toothpick. But I use a piece of the foam, and just when I get it in place, I don't know if you can see that or not.
Mm-hmm.
When I get it in place, then I'll just put a little bit of epoxy in there, and that's all. But you see, with that added in there, it'll keep. If you drop your back cast or hit a foam platform or something, it won't rip the cheek. It'll be a lot sturdier. You know.
That's great.
And
Okay.
Joe, if you could you show us how you attach the wire to the hook?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Let me see if I can find a big hook. All right, I got a big hook. All right, if I can get it in the vise. Yeah. All right. Now, normally I go through the top, lay it on the top. Reason being is because this hook has a down point or down, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to shorten this up a little bit. I can almost tell you how. I've been doing it so long, I almost have it down to a science. And again, it's all trial and error. And I have a pair of scissors that I use to cut wire. All right, so here we go. Loop on the top, come through the eye. Okay, and now we're gonna go underneath again, and come through the eye one more time. Now this is where my welding skills came in handy, I think, because like I say, when you heat it up with a lighter, you can get it in the hole again. Bear with me. Come on. Oh, oh, shit. Excuse my friends.
No worries.
Normally I have a light that Jack Denny gave me. It's for operating on cats and stuff, and it's fiber optic, but it makes noise because it has halogen bulbs,
Hmm.
and it's got a cooling fan in it, and so that's okay. I think we got it. Okay, all right now. So now I'm just gonna. All right, that's about. You got to realize when you twist this, it's going to shorten it up a little bit.
Mhm.
All I do is tie an overhand knot, simple overhand knot. Now, this looks confusing, and it's not. And you'll see when I. Yeah. All right. Because it's all going to get melted up. All right. Now, what I do is I do have. Hang on. It's here somewhere. And it can be any kind of. You can use a fish hook actually. But what I'm going to do is twist this. Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah,
Mhm.
looks
Okay.
great.
Okay, I'm going to twist this, and this is all going to melt in
Hmm.
with some heat. And don't be so fast to let go of the so it takes a while to harden up.
Wow, that's great.
But And again, I'll go back to this in a little while after I get this part done. But what it does is the nylon melts and it fuses itself together, and it's stiff enough, that it holds the profile of the fly. It still acts as a backbone or whatever. And of course, I didn't do it enough. Hang on. Bear with me here. Live TV.
Yeah.
If you go too long, it will burn. So there
Hmm.
is a, usually I use a Bic, but and I smoke cigars and my Bics are all out. So, all right, all right.
I bet that's a pretty good coup to fly too.
Uh, yeah, it could be any kind of any. It was funny. Nick had given a guy Crease Fly, and he went out for dogtooth tuna and by Australia or someplace, I guess. And the guy gave it back to me, and his hook was a Mustad 3407, 3411. The hook was straight out in the back. Didn't lose it, but but it's still. And again, now what you're going to do is you got to put a lot of thread on this stuff too. But I'm just going to fuse this back knot, and it's never going to come undone. Once you do this, you know it's pretty much a done deal. And again, flip these extra pieces. But if you're after you got your thread on,
Mhm.
that's it. That's all you got to
That's
do.
awesome.
Well, that looks great.
That's so cool.
Well,
Love it.
I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah,
Kind of,
really.
it's kind of a bogus deal here because I can do better, but you know,
I
I'm
love it, Joe. It's
under
awesome.
gun, you know.
You have a nice comment from one of our longtime viewers, Joe Vukas here, who said, not a question, but had to say, I met Joe when I was a kid at St. Thomas Point on the North Fork. Was always
Uh,
so kind and really gave me great advice. Hope to see you on the bay again, especially around Halleck Shelter Island. Your crease flies have caught me so many bass and some alligator blues when I add a rattle. Shout out to Charlie Benjamin. You guys were so helpful to me. All the best.
really, yeah. Well, yeah. The rattles do work too. It's a lot. You know, there's a lot of things in the water like shrimp. And I wrote that in Baburka's book. Submarines will pick up krill because they make a lot of noise. There's certain things make noise. The Yeah, I used to take rattles and shove one down the throat, glass rattle, and yeah, that's it's not a bad idea.
Yeah. And I have speaking of shrimp, I have sitting here next to me is Bob Viverka's famous iconic innovative saltwater flies book, which has your flies in it. And I remember seeing them and you had a lot of what I would consider to be sort of flats flies in there. There was like a crab and a shrimp and so on. So maybe talk a little bit about how you use this technique for imitating crustaceans.
Yeah, the crab flies. I used to when I go down to Florida. I used to take crab flies all the time. And it was funny. Crabs really work up here too. Glenn's got some awesome crabs that he ties, but when I was tying them, I was using the live body again. I would use or the foam, but I would take lead wire, and I'd wrap it around a pin, and then take it off, and it would be like a little spool, and pinch it. And the thing is that's the one fly you have to be able to tune. So when it hits the water, you want the lead will bounce it out with the foam, and it'll look more natural going down. If you didn't do that, if you didn't move it around to balance it, it may, you know, look unreal. And so that's why I really, didn't get too heavy in that. But the shrimp did have a glass rattle in it because it acted as a ballast, made it more neutral buoyancy. And then this way, if you use the intermediate line, it would bring it down. And if you use the floating line, it would keep it up. Again, nighttime fishing at at some of these estuaries when you hear that slurping and stuff. It worked good. But you know what works really, really, really good is a bloody pink fly that Glenn Mickelson ties. And
Mm.
I swear by that thing. You throw it, it's just a school of sand eels. You throw it in a school of sand eels, the bass will turn away and eat the pink fly. Why? I don't know. There's nothing pink in the water. Shrimp turn pink after you cook them, but they in the water, I don't know. But anyway, his pink fly has got to put more fish on the flats than you know, even when the sand eels, which are lacking. I mean, the sand eels are not anything like they used to be. And that's the key on flats fishing. I mean, the only thing I want to do is flats fish. You know, sight fishing like you.
Oh, I'm so with you on that. I love the sight fishing and just being able to track those fish. It's so exciting. I'm gonna turn my camera on, Lou.
Okay,
Um,
I will too.
um,
Great stuff. Really cool.
it really is, Joe. It's so exciting. You know, before we go into another area, you know, you were talking about your art earlier, and we have some of your art that I'd love to put up and show folks because your artwork just blew me away when you sent it to me. And Tom, if we could put it up, that would be so awesome. Everyone should really see what you do. It's so
Yeah, it's beautiful.
spectacular. I mean, look at this.
Well, I used to be a diver too, you know. I used to do some diving and it kind of gives you a good perspective on what's underwater and you know how everything flows and eelgrass and I mean, I don't know. It's just
I mean, it's got such a sensitivity, and obviously we can tell you've been on a boat casting to these fish because these are the things you and I as guides, you know, intimately understand. Let's look at the next couple of pieces. I mean,
yeah,
that's my favorite right there.
yeah, well that's a little I adjusted that before I sent it to you and I should have left it alone because it's too light. But yeah, that's another it's a little bit on the light side. You know, I should give you the original one.
And how do you do these, Joe? What are they done with? You mentioned the Wacom tablet. Are you doing this digitally?
You know, I do it digitally, but it's with the old Photoshop and the plugins. The plugins are no longer available. Case Power Tools and a couple of others.
Oh yeah, right.
Um, and but I'm working in layers, so I'll do the fish and then the background. I always do the background first, and it's not you're not scanning anything in. You like the scale pattern on the bass is actually skipping with the brush. You know, you can have spacing on in Photoshop where the brush would give it a dab of color and skip and dab and skip and dab. And I don't know. I don't know how I don't know. It comes naturally somehow.
You,
Considering I was never schooled in any of this stuff. Like I say, Bob Woolley did teach me some how to work with layers and stuff. But you know, but this
Beautiful.
you know, it shows that really well. There's a book cover you did. I think we have it. We're going to put it up.
yeah
And just the layering of that book cover and how how you looked at I know you're flattered by it, but I love Tom, can we put up the book cover because
Mm.
it just was so incredible.
yeah
And
that's Angelo's book Flies in the Northeast.
yes,
It was like a collage of because what else are you going to do? It's got flies in the Northeast. There's a million different flies, you know. And it was all pieces, parts of stuff that I had, and Angelo's. I gotta say he's been very gracious. You know, he's always wrote pretty good stuff. You know about me and stuff. But and you know, am I that good? I don't know if I'm that good, but it works sometimes. Okay,
it
you know.
does.
Amazing. Amazing. And
Hey,
are you using photographs for the models for these? How
No,
are you? Because
no,
they
no.
look so
No,
realistic.
no, I mean, I can probably, I mean, I have, you know how many hard drives I have where I'll sketch a fish and it comes out like a photograph when you're done, like a bluefish. Um, and then you do the shading. Again, it's, yeah, when I was a badass biker for 20 years, I did airbrush work on motorcycles.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and flame jobs and naked ladies and dragons and all kinds of crazy shit. Oh, stuff. But the you know, the airbrush was a pretty neat thing. And then I picked up a book, Drew Blair. He's got a school actually and stuff, but some of his artwork was so impressive. And then I went to the computer to do it, and it's very similar. But you know, you never watch what your hand's doing because you have a pen
Mhm.
and your hand's working on a slate. Okay, what they call it, I call it a Wacom, but it's Wacom. And you know, you watch the screen, and you know, after a while, you can figure it out, and I don't know, it just works. It's just all
Well,
I
I
can
think
say.
the lighting is what really strikes me about all of this. It's the reflection you're getting off it. I mean, I'm looking at that false albacore there in the middle. The
Yeah,
reflection you get off his cheek and off his back is really
well,
so
yeah,
true.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you can actually you can do that. You know, by there's a plugin for day for sunlight or moonlight or whatever kind of light. And like I say, the old programs, I couldn't do this without those old programs. So that's why I'm still running a bunch of old Macs, and I kind of stepped away from it anyway. I don't know. After a while, if you don't, you know, you got so many other things going on. You know, I don't, I can't keep up. You know, there's not enough time in the day for this stuff. But I may get back into it. You never know.
So
Well,
I'm noticing on this cover here too, I don't see any crease flies on here. I see some clousers. I see some,
There's one on the top right.
okay, there I see it, right?
yeah,
So
Okay.
yeah, top right has it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when
Okay.
you're out guiding in you know in this neck of the woods, what are other than the crease fly, what are the and you mentioned Mickelson's fly, but
Yeah.
what are your go-to flies? I'm just curious as a guide for these waters.
Deceivers. Oh God, there's so much. I mean, it depends on the bait too. You know, I mean, it depends on the sunlight. Depends on the bait. Depends on. There's so many variables with this stuff. It's funny because sometimes you will throw a wet sock in the water and it'll catch something. You know, and other times you got the nicest fly in the world, and the fish are just totally ignoring you. But
Mhm.
yeah, there's not no. I like assorted. I mean, and I'm not a purist. I don't I just use crease flies. Believe me, clousers. A lot of times you got to be down, right on the
Yeah.
bottom,
Yeah.
and you know it's hard to beat that. David had a white fly that murdered the bass over on Indian Neck and Nassau Point area out here. He actually gave me one. So and it worked, you know. So again, it also worked for albacore. I don't
Oh,
know.
that was the jellyfish. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
jellyfish.
that was the jellyfish. Yeah.
Yeah, a comment from Bob Lewis here, another longtime Masters of the Fly participant. He says, two comments. A friend told me to use crease flies for albies, and it is literally a new sport. They come full out of the water from all angles. So entertaining. Once in North Carolina, we had super picky albies, and a local guide came on the radio and said, put on a crease fly, and it worked. Crease flies rock.
Nice.
It's interesting. I haven't fished crease flies for albies that much, but I'm definitely going to do that this season, David. When we should get Joe and the two of us out
Oh,
and fish
definitely.
crease flies for albies. It'd be fun.
No, it'll be a lot of fun. You know what? When I'm making my crease flies for albies, they have a lot of pink in them. You know, looks a little bit like the anchovies, and I've literally had a albie hit a crease fly so hard that it's come 5 feet out of the water.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
Paul Dixon, he calls them cut bait. That's because I guess he uses them occasionally too. But yeah, no, they are. I don't know something about them, but they do work. But I always thought it was the silver, though. I mean, you know, again,
Yeah.
you know, for some reason, to me, everything has some silver in it. And
Mhm.
Hey, Joe, before we go,
yeah,
there's something over your shoulder that's in the shape of a striped bass. Looks like a weather vane. Would you like to pull that down and bring it in front of the camera? I'm so fascinated by that.
actually, it might be easier to put the camera up to it. Um,
Okay.
you know, Yeah, let's see what we got.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's cool.
it actually spins in the wind, you
Oh, it's
know.
beautiful.
But
That's beautiful.
yeah, this is what I'm trying to get into. I mean, I don't know why, but
Well,
somehow
you couldn't make that on your computer.
no, that you can't make on a computer. And then I have Leonardo da Vinci books by the Kurds, and um, of course I got my Harley Davidson in the back, and picture of Lefty Glenn, Don Avocadio, and me with a beret. I used to wear a beret if anybody ever watched me tie before in the years ago, but and I still
That's
got hair too. It's amazing, isn't it? But
It is. It is.
that
Well,
is
I
quite the
didn't,
man cave you have there. I've got serious man cave envy right now.
oh, so do I.
yeah, well,
Well, you know,
I can't compete with Bears then. What's his name? Scott.
Oh, does he have a crazy
He's got
man
a
cave?
ponytail almost down to his
Oh,
feet.
a ponytail.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that.
well, Joe, this has been such a great evening with you. And I'm like so flattered that you agreed to it. And I'm lucky enough that I've known you for God, the better part of 30 years. And I'm proud to call you my friend. And you kind of really have made my month by showing us your man cave and your flies. It's just such a wonderful thing, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, I appreciate it immensely, and I'll be catching up. We got to go to a bar, have a couple drinks, eh?
Well, let's do it.
Without a
Let's do
doubt,
it.
Lewin's
Let's
great,
without
make
a
it
great meeting
doubt.
happen.
you. I mean, it's good. I'm happy to meet you too.
Yeah, Joe, thank
It'll
you
be
so much. You really are such an inspiration to so many people. And I mean, I honestly, when we posted, about this event, there's so many people who came out on social media and, an email and text just saying how important your fly has been to them. Where it's really our honor to be able to feature you on Masters of the
It
Fly.
is. And I just want to remind everybody that tonight's show will be living in perpetuity on YouTube. So you can refer your friends, and we'll put a link up for all of this. And also something we didn't show, but we're going to offer it to everybody is diagrams on how to tie the fly that you sent me, and that'll be available as a PDF for everybody.
Oh yeah, that's great. So we'll make sure that that's up for everybody. That because I saw that was really helpful. So
It's
we'll put it up
really
on our website.
incredible, and it's a great thing. And Joe, just in case you're interested, I'm going to quickly post and talk about our next guest coming up, or Lou will,
Yeah.
because the very thing you're using to tie the fly, our next guest is going to be using not your vise, but the Norvise.
Yeah, so February 25th, everyone, we have Tim O'Neill from Norvise, and where, as you can see, I've got my Norvise up here, tying crease flies today. But even without a Norvise, I think what Tim will talk about is really sort of some of the techniques, the newest techniques for tying big saltwater flies using these new incredible vices, Norvise and many others, Regal, etc. And we'll also be doing, David, a giveaway, I believe, that we'll talk more about on the show. We'll keep it a surprise for
Yeah,
that show.
and it's really interesting. Besides Tim's Norvise is how he handles his thread and the bobbin he uses, which is a pretty incredible marvel of engineering, I must say.
Yeah, it's a self-retracting bobbin. So we'll talk about that on the next show too. But Joe, thank you so much for your time, and thanks to everybody who attended. We're super glad to have been able to have you tonight, and we'll talk to you soon, and we'll get out on the water this season together for sure. If not at a bar.
Definitely have that drink together.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you so
Good night,
much.
everybody. Thank you.